Thank you. Our last presentation this evening is Brady Shaeffer presenting his talk on prophecy.
Hey, everyone, stretch it out a little bit. It's been a long night. Come on. Don't want to make you too bored. Okay. Prophets channel infinite wisdom in order to shed light on society's seemingly endless future. Prophets are normally driven by religion, hallucinations, observations of nature, and other rewards. My original goal was to find who was the best prophet or prophets of all time. So my first thought was Paul the Octopus, known for his expertise in predicting World Cup games. Okay, but seriously, I actually spent part of the past 6 months of research on Nostradamus. He's the most world-renowned prophet of all time. Nostradamus lived in the 16th and 17th centuries and was renowned for predicting events such as Katrina, the rise of Hitler, the London Fire, and even the French Revolution. Nostradamus channeled his prophecies through pictures and quatrains, which is basically a poem broken up into paragraphs of 4 sentences each. But does Nostradamus deserve the credit he's been receiving for the past 1,000 years? Well, when looking at the facts, not even close. Well, it is key to notice that Nostradamus is indeed a poet, not a prophet. And odds are, for famous as he is, that 1 out of the 1,000 quatrains that he wrote throughout his lifetime are bound to be somewhat accurate. Additionally, Nostradamus is so broad in his writing that any piece can be opened up to so much speculation that one interpretation can make him look like a world-class prophet. So let's look at one quatrain of his as an example. This one was prediction of JFK's assassination. As you can see, the first word, roof, can be interpreted with multiple views. Is it JFK refusing to have a roof on his car, which led to his demise? Or maybe it's Lee Harvey Oswald shooting from the book to the roof depository. The next proclaims Lee Harvey Oswald's innocence, stating that the true killer lies in the bushes nearby, also known as the Misty Cops. The word thunderbolt could possibly mean JFK being shot by a gun, or maybe it was how quickly the event transpired. The Bear Petition? Well, that was Jan Dixon, a modern prophet who warned JFK about his possible assassination. And lastly, Another Falls at Night is suspected to be about his brother's assassination, Robert Kennedy, who died at 1 a.m. in the morning. Well, I decided, pretty accurate, right? Well, I decided to take the same exact words and make a prophecy of my own. And I thought that this prophecy was about the fall of Steve Jobs. Let's take another look. The word roof is generally high in terms of height. Well, another form of height is job status. The man who fired Steve Jobs was the CEO of Apple at the time, John Sculley. The next line proclaims Steve Jobs' innocence, because the only reason why Sculley fired him in the first place is because he needed a scapegoat for the failure of the Mac II. But where's the Misty Cops going? Well, when I think of bushes, I think of big piles of green, and another thing that can come in big piles of green is money. Maybe the Misty Cops was the shady greed that drove the board to firing Steve Jobs. The thunderbolt might have been the shock of Steve Jobs was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The Bear Petition was most certainly his doctor who gave him this diagnosis. And lastly, the last line is up to debate. Another Falls at Night could possibly be the future passing away of Steve Wozniak, his longtime partner, or maybe it's the death of Apple, the company itself. So we took the same exact quatrain, analyzing the same exact words, and got 2 highly believable prophecies. Because of the broadness in Nostradamus' writing, this occurrence is not only bound to happen once, but multiple times throughout all of his predictions. So with the best prophet of all time just proved to be a broad, deceitful liar, does that mean that Paul the Octopus is the undisputed champion when it comes to predicting the future?
Let's go, Paul.
Well, I wasn't satisfied with that result, so I decided to do a little bit more research. And that's what led to my most surprising discovery of all. Turns out, the best group of prophets is actually parents. But I'm not talking about the traditional type of prophet that predicts like the world's end or the death of a politician. No matter how much you guys try to pass it off, parents are the overbearing control freaks of the 21st century. Carefully pre-selecting your child's choices on what seems a minute degree, but in the long term can have major effects. You guys aren't comparable to dictators, but some of us do believe so. But you do actually press the minors to make certain decisions. Some people call it guiding, a push in the right direction, or straight up governing from whose perspective you look at it. But what do parents actually control in a minor's life? Well, I found out that they establish 3 separate aspects. The first is the home environment, pertaining to what's the child's name, and religion, and expectations for their life. The next one is the social environment. What neighborhood does he or she live in, and what sports he or she is allowed to play. And lastly, the school environment, talking about jobs, college choices, teachers, and how much technology is available to students? Well, let's look in depth in the first establishment, your home environment. Specifically, your name. Whether your name be Buxom, or Bixby, or Bray, or Mordecai, Ali, Van Allen, O'Shea. Okay, but do names actually matter? Well, surprisingly, yes. Names can change what kind of job you get and what race and social status you assume to be a part of. And remember, that name is an indicator, not a cause and an outcome. For example, if Jake Williams and Deshaun Williams applied for the same exact job using identical resumes, well, Jake Williams is more likely to get the callback. Why? Well, this is because Deshaun, a typically African-American name, is unfairly assumed to follow with economical penalty and unreliability. Even Wellington Smith, one of the greatest basketball players ever to play at Summer High School, was only named Wellington because his parents didn't want to be discriminated against when he came to college. Not only does names predict what race you're assumed to be part of, but also predicts what social status you can be a part of. When reading Freakonomics by Stephen Dubner and Stephen Levitt, they speculated on how wealthier names started out unique, but as time went on, lower-income families decided to copy these names and give them to their children in order to seem the advantage of being rich. They speculated that for every baby name stereotypically associated with a higher income family, another 5 babies of lower income families will receive the same name in the next 10 years. As you see in the chart using Freakonomics, only one name, Sarah, stayed the most popular white girls' names in the 1980s, the most popular white girls' names in the 2000s. Well, in the 2000s, you see brand new names like Madison, Lauren. So where exactly did these names come from, and where did the other names go? As you can see, the most common high-income Caucasian female names in the 1990s in the top left, you can see both Madison and Lauren were there. And you see that the most common low-income white girl names in the 1990s copied 2 the most popular Caucasian female names in the 1980s. You can see that the cycle goes on and on and on, where the wealthier create the names, the lower copy them to seem to get an advantage, and eventually it becomes so generic that they die out. But what does this all mean, and why does it even matter? Well, what are the next parents that can find the next Madison or the next Lauren, or giving their child the best advantage when it comes to getting a job or getting into a certain college? But now, let's move on to the next 2 environments, because they're intertwined. The school environment and the social environment. Do you ever wonder why track and field aren't offered at a young age, while sports like football, hockey, and lacrosse are? Well, supposedly, hockey and lacrosse are team-oriented sports and provide beneficial and life-altering experiences. Well, track and field, a predominantly individual competition, does not offer the same experiences, and therefore they aren't as popular. But yet again, what does this even mean? Well, in football and lacrosse and hockey, they require a lot of expensive equipment. Some the lower income families cannot afford. While in track and field, all you need is a pair of shoes and the will to compete. Therefore, the lower income families are at a disadvantage because they cannot provide the kid the same experience as the wealthier families who are able to play these sports. And lastly, the decision on where to live can simply change a kid's life forever. We all like to think that the world is an even playing field and everyone has the same chance as everyone else. But after reading a piece by Pierre Bourdieu, a French sociological philosopher, I realized that our thinking is all wrong. He highlighted a few key points: that the wealthy stay wealthy, that symbolic wealth is equivalent to physical wealth, and that language monitors wealth. As we take a look at the wealth cycle, you can see that higher income families tend to buy more expensive property. And when you buy more expensive property, you have to pay more taxes. And when you pay more taxes, more money is allotted to the educational department. And when the educational department is allotted more money, they have a better chance to give a better education to the students. And when you get that better education, the students tend to get into a better college. And when you get a stereotypically better college, like a Harvard or a Yale or a Brown, you tend to get a higher paying job. And when you get a higher paying job, well, you settle down in a nice neighborhood and buy some real expensive property. So you can see how the cycle repeats itself throughout the generations, proving the wealthy stay wealthy and the poor stay poor, proving that there really is no social mobility in our lives. Well, next, symbolic wealth is described as visits to concerts, museums, plays, playing an instrument, or, as I said before, playing a sport. Symbolic wealth is more valuable than physical wealth, even though it can't be spent, because it provides certain experiences that cannot be achieved by all. Symbolic wealth is a hidden language, only shared by affluent people, talking about their last trip to Paris, or the last time they went sailing on their boat. These are the experiences that the lower income families cannot afford for their children. And therefore they're at a disadvantage, because eventually children who experience these things will become accustomed to and eventually excel in these given areas. And lastly, the last category is language. Well, In wealthier homes, they tend to interact, talk, and read more to their children. And therefore, they're inciting their child's learning process through language, and eventually, where the child become accustomed to and speaking proficiently at a young age. There's a study done by Betty Hart and Todd Risley. It was called the 32 million word gap. And they speculate by the age of 1, kids of higher income families would have heard 8 million more words than kids of lower income families. That means by the age of 4, kids of higher income families would have heard 32 million more words. You can see how this massive word gap can influence the intelligence of a kid at a young age. And so it turns out life is filled with head starts, shortcuts, linguistic steroids, and octopuses that can see into the future. Okay. But these advantages, these experiences give certain social classes advantages in life. And overall, throughout this long, confusing, tiring, and at times boring journey, I realized that I'm not even close to where I imagined I'd end up being from the start of the year to the end of the year. And I'm almost glad about that, because now I can inform everyone about making decisions. About me, children, sorry. So remember, the next time you sit down to make a decision, it can impact your child's life on a huge and possibly catastrophic scale. So no pressure. Thank you. Have a nice night, everyone.